It's the Beth Cahill Show. And now, here's Beth.
Good morning and welcome to the Beth Cahill Show. This week has been the worst week in regards to the coronavirus in the United States. There does seem to be some light at the end of the tunnel. Let's run through some numbers. So at this point, there is roughly 480,000 cases in the United States, with at least 18,000 deaths. We have heard over and over that this week was supposed to be the worst week for fatalities, and unfortunately, that is one area the experts have gotten it right. I shouldn't say one area. That is an area that the experts have gotten it right. 25% of all coronavirus-related deaths happened this week. Now, the experts are telling us that this is supposed to we're still waiting for the peak, that it's supposed to peak tomorrow on Easter Sunday. And after that the numbers are expected to start to go down. According to the University of Washington model, which I will caution has been inaccurate in certain areas of this pandemic, but according to that model, come June 14th, we are supposed to have 0 deaths. That's great news. That is absolutely fantastic news. So right here in Washington State, there is still a stay-at-home order in place until May 4th. But what I will say, I will add to that, is that the flattening of the curve seems to be working in Washington State's hospitalizations and ICU rates have come down significantly. We are actually starting to send back medical supplies and medical equipment to states that are continuing to be hit hard with this. So Washington State seems to be on the downturn. Obviously, we need to continue to listen to the experts and what they're telling us to do, but it does sound like we are on the downturn here in Washington State. Every week I run through the most updated numbers that I can with you, and I do that in hopes that I can keep you, most informed each week. There are very few things that have been certain with this virus so far, though, but there have been a few that have remained steady. And that is, many people are continuing to get sick with coronavirus. And far too many have died. 1 death is too many. Now, last week I spoke about modeling and how so many of the models have continued to be wrong. And I will say I received a few not so friendly emails from listeners. And that's okay. We are all free to express how we are feeling about this differently. But I want to make sure that the idea that we cannot even discuss, or that I cannot even discuss how wildly off the modeling has been, that modeling was used to shut down our entire country. And the idea that so many high-profile people are deeming this topic as off limits is shocking to me. And it's not right. This is a topic that must be talked about. The new projection from Americans that will lose their life is now down to 60,000. Again, 60,000 too many. But 2 weeks ago, that number was 200,000. So it's dropped significantly. And I want to make clear that those numbers, the 200,000 death number, it did take into account social distancing. So when you hear people say it's because you're doing a great job, no, those models took into account social distancing. That's how off they've been. Now understand, no life lost is okay, and I am definitely not suggesting that. But the idea that we cannot ask a question and wonder if our response was a bit of an overreaction, especially on behalf of the 17 million now unemployed people, is utter insanity. There are people out there right now that cannot feed their families. They have lost their businesses. Some of these businesses have been owned by families for generations. There are abused kids in their homes every single day, basically locked in their homes with abusive parents or abusive guardians. We have mentally ill people stuck inside, some of them stuck inside of their homes by themselves. It is okay to question the experts and the models when you take into account all of the things that I have just listed. We have to figure out a way to safely get out of this and begin to reopen our country. If we don't, we could be stuck in a recession that could take years, maybe even a decade, to climb out of. You hear that from economic experts all the time. There is a middle ground here that we need to find. I mean, we've got to be able to keep our citizens safe while opening up our economy. We also want to be able to keep people healthy, not just from the coronavirus, but keep them mentally healthy as well. A poll that was out last week showed the majority of Americans, actually by a big majority, has said this has taken a mental toll on them. You know, there's been an option that's been floated by the president that we could look at possibly reopening parts of the economy that have been hit less hard than others, or possibly looking at, you know, more elderly and immunocompromised people staying home until the antibody testing is available. You know, meanwhile, others can attempt to go back to work. Testing is something that we need to get a better handle on. I mean, it's something that we still have not gotten a handle on. Yes, we have tested more people than anywhere else, but no everyone who wants a test can still not get a test. Until we have that readily available, and until we know who has it and who has already had it, we may be having thousands or millions, if you want to, you know, take it a step further, of people at home who have already had coronavirus, but they were asymptomatic. And those people should be free to go back to work. Listen to Lindsey Graham speak on this.
I call the term, there's two kinds of tests. Do you have it or have you had it? A lot of people have had it, don't know it. We need to test them, get them back to work because they're good to go. And we need mass tests to show that we don't have it right now. The road to economic recovery is through testing labs. We're turning the corner on testing. We're going to get the economy back open safely. And the way to do it is have a testing regime that allows people to go back to work safely. We're got better days lie ahead.
Nobody has the perfect answer to this, right? There is no perfect answer. I mean, this is a virus that we've only had a few months to study. We've only had a few months to study anything about this virus. So the facts, if you actually want to call them facts, they're always evolving. We talked last week about the president putting together, you know, some kind of task force similar to what he's doing with medical experts, but now with economic experts and mental health experts. And it seems that that is beginning to get underway, although arguably not soon enough. That should have been something that he had side by side with the medical experts. Again, we're learning as we go here. But the reality is, even when they begin to reopen the economy, that still means that Americans are going to have to feel comfortable to go out into public again. They're going to have to feel comfortable to go sit in these restaurants, to go to a movie theater and sit next to a stranger, you know, shopping malls, coffee shops. This has done a number on people's psyche as well. And I don't see that going away just because they tell us that America's back in business. This is going to take a while. Maybe I'm wrong, and for the sake of Americans everywhere, I really hope that I am. Meanwhile, though, in politics, yes, there is still politics to discuss amongst all the coronavirus discussion. Bernie Sanders has suspended his campaign.
While this campaign is coming to an end, our movement is not. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. reminded us that, quote, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice, end quote. The fight for justice is what our campaign has been about. The fight for justice is what our movement remains about. Today, I congratulate Joe Biden, a very decent man, who I will work with to move our progressive ideas forward. On a practical note, Let me also say this. I will stay on the ballot in all remaining states and continue to gather delegates. While Vice President Biden will be the nominee, we must continue working to assemble as many delegates as possible at the Democratic Convention, where we will be able to exert significant influence over the party platform and other functions. Then together, standing united, we will go forward to defeat Donald Trump, the most dangerous president in modern American history. And we will fight to elect strong progressives at every level of government, from Congress to the school board. As I hope all of you know, this race has never been about me. I ran for the presidency because I believed that as a president, I could accelerate and institutionalize the progressive changes that we are all building together. And if we keep organizing and fighting, I have no doubt but that is exactly what will happen. While the path may be slower now, we will change this nation, and with like-minded friends around the globe, change the entire world.
So what does that mean? Well, for starters, Joe Biden is now the presumptive Democratic nominee. That's a scary thought in itself. Joe Biden is not well. His cognitive issues are on full display every time he speaks. There are now far too many interviews or viral clips out there to ignore this or to blame it on, right-wing politics. This is just a hit job. No, this is not a hit job. Joe Biden, he wasn't good on the campaign trail leading up to the country shutting down. And since he's been, in his basement trying to speak to America, he's not good there either. On the campaign trail, there were times where, he would lash out at voters. I've put together some clips of some of the exchanges that Biden has had with voters on the campaign trail this season. There's one where he's at a town hall basically telling, an older gentleman that he's fat and that he wanted to have a push-up contest with him. At the end of the clip, the voter says, "I'm not voting for you." And Biden replies with, "I know you're not. You're too old to vote for me." I mean, come on. Listen to that clip.
Around a long time, and I know more than most people know. And I can get things done. That's why I'm running. And you want to check my shape on, let's do push-ups together, man. Let's run. Let's do whatever you want to do. Let's take my Number two. No one has said my son has done anything wrong, and I did not on any occasion. And no one has ever said it. Not
I
one.
didn't say you were doing anything wrong.
You said I set up my son to work in an oil company. Isn't that what you said? Get your words straight, Jack.
That's what I hear on MSNBC.
You don't hear that in MSNBC. You did not hear that. But you heard. Look, okay, I'm not going to get in an argument with you, man.
No, I don't want to.
Well, yeah, you do, but look, Pat, look, here's the deal. Here's the deal.
It looks like you don't have any more backbone than Trump does.
Any other questions?
Yeah, all right. I'm not voting for you.
Well, I knew you weren't, man. You think I thought you'd stand up and vote for me? You're too old to vote for me. All right, here we go.
So that's disturbing in itself. This was an older gentleman who was having an exchange with a candidate for the president of the United States. And rather than just answer the question, he gets into an argument with the guy and ends up insulting the voter. There was another time where he called a female voter a lying, dog-faced pony soldier. Yes, I said that. A lying, dog-faced pony soldier. Listen here.
So you're arguably the candidate with the greatest advantage in this race. You've been the vice president. You weren't burdened down by the impeachment trials. In the participation. So how do you explain the performance in Iowa, and why should the voters believe that you can win the national election?
It's a good question. Number one, Iowa's a Democratic caucus. You ever been to a caucus? No, you haven't. You're a lying, dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest. I'm going to be honest with you. It was a little bit confusing in Iowa, number one. But let's assume everything was exactly right in Iowa. The idea that you come in with about half the delegates that the leaders come in with in Iowa does not necessarily say how you're going to win Pennsylvania.
So again, besides the insulting name, did you even understand his response to her question? It made no sense to what this woman was actually asking him. There was another time he got into an argument with a Michigan auto union worker, who dared ask Joe Biden a question on his gun control position. The video was hard to make out. I could not find a clip that you could actually understand. But it's worth looking up if you haven't seen it, because not only did Joe Biden get basic policy questions wrong on this, and mind you, on his own policy, but he basically said he wanted to go out back and fight this guy, all while being in the man's face. I mean, the entire exchange was just bizarre. Joe Biden's whole appeal is that Democrats hope that he can bring back blue-collar voters. The voters that voted for Obama, but then went to Trump. They need those voters to return to them in 2020. So insulting them, it doesn't seem, to be the best strategy, but it's something that Biden continues to do. I want to play a montage of clips of Biden because, again, these are not necessarily exchanges with voters. Some of this is from the debates or just out on the campaign trail. And again, he's just not the man he once was regarding his health. And this is not to be mean. This is a man that's running to be the president of the United States. So it's not only fair to question his health, it's our duty as voters. This is our country.
Look, tomorrow's Superstar Tuesday, and I want to thank you all. I tell you what, I'm rushing ahead, aren't I? 150 million people have been killed since 2007 when Bernie voted to exempt the gun manufacturers from liability. It would put 720 million women back in the workforce. Nobody should be in jail for a nonviolent crime. My name's Joe Biden. I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate. What's not to like about Vermont in terms of the beauty of it? And what a neat town. Play the radio. Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. We choose science over fiction. We choose truth over facts. Think about it. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing. I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun, and the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on me. You had people like you had people like the former chairman and leader of the party in Germany. Go to Joe 3033.
So there's a lot to unpack there. For starters, he talks about gun deaths as being 150 million when it's actually 150,000. Again, that's too many. I'm not saying 150,000 gun deaths is okay. I'm just saying it's 150,000, not 150 million. He then goes on to talk about bringing 720 million women back to the workforce. We live in a country of 320 million, total. That's men and women. He says he's running for the Senate, not the presidency when he talks. He also talked about how beautiful Vermont is. He wasn't actually in Vermont. These are things that you must question. This wasn't a couple slip-ups. This happens every time he's in front of a camera. And this is not something that just Republicans are talking about. Democrats are talking about this too. There has been several Democrats on the record talking about how he doesn't seem to necessarily always be understanding or coherent. I mean, Cory Booker said something similar to that, to be honest. We're talking about the leader of the free world here, or someone who's at least running to be the leader of the free world. And to assume that Joe Biden could run this country, that's insulting to voters. The last thing that I want to talk about before I run out of time here is something that Japan started this week, and I am really, really hoping that our leaders will begin to follow suit on this. So Japan has begun, paying their firms to leave China and to relocate their production. It's part of a stimulus package to help, their manufacturers shift production out of China. And this is a really big deal because China is Japan's biggest trading partner under any normal circumstance. And that number has definitely, decreased. In February, imports from China to Japan were half of what a normal month would look like. Which is why, Japan has started to begin the process of trying to, not be so reliant on China as a manufacturing base. They're wanting to shift production back to Japan, and well, they should. What doesn't come back to Japan, they are saying they want to spread throughout Southeast Asia. The United States needs to do the same. We currently rely on China to produce so much needed medical supplies and medicine, amongst other things. This should be the wake-up call our government needs to bring manufacturing back to the United States. No country should ever be dependent on another country for supplies to keep their citizens safe. Yet here we are. Our politicians should be ashamed of themselves. Lindsey Graham has taken this one step further in not just wanting to bring manufacturing back to America, but for China to pay financially for the economic devastation that they have caused. Listen to Lindsey Graham talk about this.
Yeah, so the first thing I want to do is get the United States Senate on the record where we don't blame Trump, we blame China. The Chinese government's responsible for 16,000 American deaths and 17 million Americans being unemployed. It's the Chinese government and the way they behave that led to this pandemic. This is the third one to come out of China. I want to make our response to this so overwhelming that China will change its behavior. I want to get the medical supply chain back into the United States, and I want to stop canceling some debt that we owe to China because they should be paying us, not us paying China. So I think you're going to see a bipartisan pushback against China to punish them so severely to deter them in the future.
So there was a piece in USA Today, I believe, that said, similar things to what Graham is talking about here. The piece basically argues that, because China deceived the world about the extent of the coronavirus, which, ultimately led other countries to feel like they had a false sense of security, and by having this false sense of security, it ultimately delayed other countries, including the United States, actions by weeks, even months in some cases. So because they were deceitful about this, that they should have to pay for the devastation that it's caused the world. Keep in mind, on January 14th, we were still being told by the World Health Organization, which got their information from China, that that coronavirus could not be transmitted human to human. That was a lie. So outbreaks happen, right? But when they do, it is the job of the country that it came from to be truthful in the causes and how it's transmitted, if they have that information available, which China did. It's important to do that so that other countries have time to prepare. And the only way to really, punish China, if you will, for their behavior is to disrupt economic relations. We have to reduce economic resources where we can. And that starts with medicine, medical supplies. Those need to be manufactured in the United States of America. Congress needs to act, and they need to act now. We are running out of time. But that is it for me today, folks. I hope everyone has a wonderful Easter weekend. We may not be celebrating how we usually would with lots of family and friends. I know for us, it's going to look a lot different this year. It's just going to be my immediate family, my little boys and my husband. So things are going to look different. They're going to look different for everyone. But I am challenging myself to stay positive and to think of all the blessings that I do have and to remember what Easter is really all about. And that's the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So stay safe, everyone. Have a great Easter. Thank you for listening. And I will hope you will tune in next week. And again, if you cannot catch me live, you can always find my shows by downloading my podcast, The Beth Cahill Show, on Apple, Spotify, iTunes, you name it. You can find it. Have a good weekend. Thanks for listening.
This has been The Beth Cahill Show. If you have any feedback for Beth or would like to suggest a future topic or guest for the show, email beth@thebethcahillshow.com. That's Beth at the Beth Cahill, spelled Cahill show.com. Tune in again next Saturday morning at 9 for more of The Beth Cahill Show, right here on AM 1590. The Answer.